Tov, my friends. Today's Daf Yomi
Good
is
morning.
Good morning. Good morning. Today's Daf Yomi is Bava Kamma, Daf Sadi Zion, Bava Kamma 97. But of course, we're going to start on the bottom of 96b. We're going to start on the bottom of 96b. And we're going to start with the Brisa. Now, we want to know, the Gemara is asking the question, why is Rav said the ruling like Rav Meir, where he says that a slave is like real estate? Avadam kekarkos. Gemara explains that why is Rav ruling like a minority position, Rav Meir? The Gemara explains that Rav reversed the position in the Mishnah, and he has that position that slaves are like real estate according to the Rabbanan and not like Rabbi Meir. And the reason is because he has two brisos that record that position in the name of the Rabbanan. We already saw one, and now we have the second one. Tanya Machlef Para B'Chamor. So this is what's called a kinyan chalipin, where you exchange two items, and only one of the items needs to be present. So the other animal was not with the two owners when they made the transaction, and then they found out that the animal gave birth. So we don't know if the animal gave birth prior to the transaction or after the transaction. In which case, we don't know who the owner of the offspring is. Hamachav par b'chamor v'yalda, and we know it gave birth. Somebody sold a slave, and it's the same thing. Zelmer bershusi yalda. Each one claims that it gave birth while it was in their domain. One claims it gave birth while it was his domain. V'hala shows taken. The other one was quiet. Zachaba. Then the one who makes the claim is going to get the offspring. But Zelmer Ani Odeh, Zelmer Ani Odeh. If each one says, I don't know, Yachoku, they split it. Zelmer Bershusi, Zelmer Bershusi. If each one claims that the offspring was born while it's still in their domain, Yishava. Then the one who's making that claim that it was born in my possession, then the original owner of the animal takes an oath. Yishava Mocher. Then the one who was selling it takes the oath, Shebershusa Yalda, that it was born in his domain. The mayor says because all those people who take an oath in the Torah, they take an oath, but they don't have to pay as a result of their oath. That's the position, Divrei Rebbe Meir. The Chacham say we don't take an oath on real estate or on slaves. So we see from here that the Chacham are the position that slaves are like real estate. And that's why Rav reversed the position, and he has the Chachamim are the ones who are saying that slaves are like real estate. So the Gemara says, well, if that's the case, why does the Rav say halacha is like Rabbi Meir? Hi, halacha like Rabbi Meir. Why did he say the law is like Rabbi Meir? What he really means to say is halacha Rabbanan mipalei. What he really needs to say is the law is like the Rabbanan. We're on the bottom line of 96b. So the Gemara says, Hachi Kamer, this is what it means. Amaydaf chisu b'tanisu, according to you, who reversed the positions in the Mishnah, and according to you, halacha Rabbi Meir. According to you, because you record this position in the name of Rabbi Meir, according to you, the law is like Rabbi Meir. So the Gemara says, Umiya Marav Avda K'Mekarkai Dami. So the Gemara says, does Rav really accept this position that slaves are like real estate on the top line on Sadi Zayin Amarav? Amarav Daniel Barav Katina Amarav. But we have a different teaching in the name of Rav. Hatokef Avdu Shachavero. So somebody who is Tokef, somebody who grabs a hold of the slave of his friend. He just seizes his friend's slave. But also Malacha. And as a consequence of this, he does work with it. Then Potter, he doesn't have to pay. Why? Because he's just returning the slave. And we see if you steal something, you return it as it is. Meaning to say it was something that was stolen and you don't pay for the usage, you just return the object. If you say that a slave is like real estate, then why is he exempt? Then it's something that you use and you'd have to pay for it. It's not like something that was stolen, because real estate can't be quote unquote stolen. He's using the other guy's domain. And Gemara says, no, the reason why he's exempt is because he used the slave. It was like using the real estate at a time when the owner wasn't using it. It wasn't a time where the slave would otherwise have been working. And so therefore, this takes us back to our old sugya from Daf Chav, This one's benefiting and the other guy's not losing. You don't have to pay under those circumstances. Rabbi Abba, Mari, we had this in Daf Chaf Aleph, like that which Rabbi Abba sent to Mari Bar Mar, you live in your friend's courtyard. Your friend has no knowledge of it. Your friend doesn't care. He doesn't. He wouldn't have been renting it out. You have to pay for it. One guy's benefiting, the other guy's not losing. Says you don't have to pay. Here too, he's using the slave. The slave was not going to be working. It was off hours. And so therefore, the other guy's not losing anything. So therefore, he doesn't have to pay. The Gemara says, what? Is it the same case? It makes sense over there. Remember we saw there were two reasons why the guy who owns the house doesn't actually benefits a little bit by having you staying there, because a house that's unlived in, the house that people live in, is good for him. You want people to be staying in your house, a house sitter, or alternatively, or yukas sha'ar, that there's a demon whose name is She'iyah that goes into a house and breaks down the gate of that where nobody's there. So nichoy, so there the owner wants somebody actually to be staying in his house. But here in this case, does the owner of the slave really want his slave to be diminished? So it's not really a case of Zen and of Zelo Chaser. In this case, he is missing. His slave is being worked hard. He has a 40-hour week and he's reached his limit. No, the guy doesn't want his slave to be idle. Idle hands leads to something bad. And so he doesn't want idleness. And that's the problem here. And so therefore, the person who steals a slave doesn't have to pay for his use. Gemara goes on a little bit of a tangent once we're talking about stealing slaves. Bei Rav Yosef Bar Kamma have takif avdei de inchi, the masik bo zuze. So Rav Yosef Bar Kamma's house, people owed them money, and they would take their slaves. The avdei bu mulacha, they would take the people's slaves and work them without asking. So Amar Rabba Bray, my time Abimar He says, why do you think you're allowed to do this? Amar Rav Nachman, he says, I'll tell you why. So Rav Yosef Bar Kamma said, the reason I can do this is Avda Nahom Kreise Lo Shave. A slave doesn't even eat the bread. A slave is not even worth the bread of its belly. Meaning to say, that when I take the slave, I feed him, and so he's basically evening out. I'm feeding him, and that feeding him is worth more than all the work he's doing for me. So actually, I'm not even gaining anything. I'm actually helping him. Yeah, maybe Rav Nachman said this when he was referring to his slave, whose name was Aro, that the Maraka Bey Kubi, the guy was a low-level slave. His job was to be like a dancer at parties. The Maraka Bey Kubi, so that's all he did. Kulu Avde, Ma'avid Avde, but all the other slaves, they actually do work. They're building stuff. They're doing things. So you should have to pay him back. Amray Anak Rav Daniel Svirui. He says, no, I hold like Rav Daniel, Dam Rav Daniel, Barav Katina Marav, Atokif Ba'avdu Shachaver Vaso B'Malacha Pater. He says, no, I hold like that statement we said above, that if you grab the slave of your friend and you work him, you're exempt because you stole it and you just have to return it. The Gemara says, Alma Nichue Dualistry Avde. We see from here that the people don't want that their slaves remain idle. So I'm actually doing this guy a favor because he doesn't want his slave just sitting around doing nothing. He says, yeah, so Rav Yosef's son, Rabbah, said to his father, yeah, when would that be okay? Where the people don't already owe you money. But Mark, even the Masik Zuze, Milchsik Ribis, but in your case, since he owes you money, it looks like it's interest that you're taking, that in addition to the loan, he's paying you the interest. And so therefore, that's a problem. So now we have a question. People ask in general, what do you mean? If you lend your friend something, he can't ever borrow something from him because it looks like interest? So Tosfos discusses that, and he says, no, he says, It depends. If they would have lent you this type of relationship before you lent them the money. If they, let's say, you can't borrow the car from somebody you lent money to already. Well, if you would have already borrowed the car from the guy, then it'll be okay. But it can't be something that's directly connected to the loan. That's the issue. So, yes, sir. Yeah. Yeah.
He said, if you want to get somebody's trust,
Yeah, buy them lunch or something.
he said, you borrow money from them. He said, borrow $100. Not like $1. Go to a serious amount of money. And he said, and once you borrow, and then of course you pay it back promptly.
Yeah.
But that's how you establish.
Very nice, very nice IRA.
But he, I mean,
yeah, but it's.
Is that rivers and now
right. It looks like interest. Very nice, very nice.
But the interest goes the other way.
Yeah.
Goes to the borrower.
So the Gemara says, "Damar of Yosef Bar Menyumi Amar of Nachman Aval Pi Sha'amro Adar B'Chatz Shkoyach." By the way, thank you. Aval Pi Sha'amro Adar B'Chatz Chaver Shalom Midaito Ein Tzarich Haros Oslar. Even though we say if you live in your friend's courtyard, without their knowledge, you don't need to pay for it. Because we said if you borrowed money and then you live in his courtyard, then you do have to pay him for it. So when Rabba told his father, Rav Yosef, this, Amrulei Hadribi, he says, I'm going to change my mind. I'm going to change my mind. I'm going to reverse it. So he says, that's it. I heard the halacha. I need to change it. Okay. That's a very big mila. When you hear you're doing something wrong, you say, you know what? I need to change. Next case. Somebody grabs his friend's ship, and he does work with it. Amarav, so the guy who owned the ship, if he wants, he could take money for the ship as though he had rented it out, or he could take the depreciation that the guy did to the ship. Shmuel says, no, you can only take the depreciation. But actually, Rav and Shmuel says what Papa are not arguing. It depends if it was a ship that was meant for renting. If it was a ship meant for renting, then you could take either one. If it was a ship that was only meant for not renting, then you take the depreciation. Or you could say both cases are where it was meant for renting. Or you could say both places was meant for renting, and it depends if it was, where did he take it in the first place? Did he take it with the intent to rent it, and where did he take it with the intent to steal it? So those are the distinctions. Okay, so next case. We had said in our Mishnah that if you steal a coin and the coin cracks, then you have to pay what it was valued at the time that you stole it. But if you steal a coin and the guy canceled the coin, the currency was canceled by the king, then you say, I had this experience sometimes when I went to Israel one time and I brought an old shekel. I tried to pay the bus driver with it. And he says, no, we don't accept these shekalim anymore. They canceled the currency on me. So now if you steal a coin and then they cancel that currency, you're allowed to say, here, I'm giving you back the coin. This is actually what I stole. So Rav Huna says, nistak, when it says if you steal the coin and it cracks, then you have to pay back the value of what it was when you stole it. Nistak mamish. That means it actually cracked. And nifsa, when you say it was disqualified, pasalto malchus, that the king canceled the currency, and then you could just pay it back. Rabbi Yehuda Amar, no, Rabbi Yehuda says pasalto malchus, that if the king cancels the currency, nami hainu nistak. That's also the case of, that's a case of like cracked, and therefore you can't return it. So according to Rabbi Yehuda, so what does it mean it was disqualified? That it was canceled in this country, but they could say to him, go. But the guy could say to him, go to a different country and pay it back and use it there. And so therefore the coin was not canceled completely, and so therefore he could pay it back. Amar Rav Chisda or Rav Huna. So he says to Rav Huna, who says that canceled means the king canceled it. According to you, it says that if the king cancels it, you could still pay it back. What about fruit that they rotted or wine turned to vinegar? I mean, that's like the king canceled it. And there, you have to pay back the value of what it was when it was stolen. You can't just return it. I'm like, he said, no, the case of the fruit and the wine, its taste and its smell is different. But it's what's called lo nishtana. Here, in this case, it hasn't changed. It's a hezek she'eno nikar. It's a damage. It's not recognizable. Amalei Rava Rav Yehuda. So therefore, you can pay it back. Says Rav Huna. Says Rava to Rav Yehuda. Udi dach ta'amas basalto malchus nami ainu nistak. According to you, it says if the king cancels it, it's considered crack, and therefore you pay back what it was when you stole it. Are truma and it mays. What about truma that became tummy? The chipasalto malchus tummy. That's like the king canceled. That means you can't use it anymore. And you say, here it is. You're allowed to just get back to truma. So Rav Yehuda would say, "Hasam or minkar zika." In that case, it looks like all the other pieces of wheat, so it's not recognizable. But hacha minkar zika. Here, everybody can see that this coin is not the same as all the other coins that are being used, so it's recognizable, and so therefore you can't pay it back. Just say, here's your coin. You have to give him the value of what it was when you stole it. So then Gemara says, Itmar, let's say somebody lends money to his friend, and he says, he lends it to his friend, he says, you're going to have to pay me back 10 shkolim, specifically. And then, like happened to me, the coins were taken out of circulation, and those shkolim no longer acceptable. Rav says on the top of Sad Design of a base, no salam shot. So Rav says you have to give him coins that are currently valid, meaning say you said you have to pay him back 10 shekel. You have to give him the equivalent of whatever is flying in the country at that time. Shmuel says you could say to him, go to Meishan and spend the money, meaning to say, you can pay with it because since it's still acceptable to use it in a different country. The Ravid writes that Meishan was like a bank. They had a bank where they would take all the coins that were ever in currency. Says Rav Nachman, Amar Rav Nachman, Staber Milsa de Shmuel, the Islay Urchal Amazal Meishan. So Rav Nachman says, I agree with Shmuel if this guy has the ability to get to Meishan or he goes to Meishan. Aval, but if he has no way of going to Meishan, then he can't pay it back. Then I don't agree with Shmuel. Well, Eisvei Rava Rav Nachman. So Rava challenges Rav Nachman, who says he agrees with Shmuel that you could say go to Meishan and spend this money if the guy has the ability to get there. So Rava challenges Rav Nachman. It says in the Tosefta about Meiser Sheni, we know that Meiser Sheni, if you have produce, you can redeem it onto a coin and take the coin to Jerusalem. It says, Ein mechalon almos she'enam yotzos. You can't deconsecrate the Meiser Sheni produce onto money that is not used, she'enam yotzos, at all in Jerusalem, because that's not called money, or you have to deconsecrate onto money. Ketzad, how so? Hayu almos kuzbios Yerushalmios. Let's say you have money that's called Kuzbios Yerushalmios. What's the Kuzbios Yerushalmios? Rashi gives actually two explanations. The first is that this is the coin of Ben Kuziba. That's another name for Bar Kokhba. And they were Jerusalem coins. And those coins are not able to be used at all, meaning to say they were from earlier kingdom, they were done. Or alternative explanation is that it came from the place called Kaziv. But either way, we're talking about whatever. Either way, we're talking about coins that were no longer in use. Hayolamos kuzbios Yerushalmios, Oshel Nolachem Narishonim, or from earlier kings. Ein Mechalon, you can't deconsecrate the Meiser Sheni onto them. Hashel Achronim Dumya Derishonim, but if it was from later kings that are basically in use in another country, but they're similar to the early kings in the fact that they can't be used in this place, that nevertheless, you can use them, the chalin. So we see from here, even if he doesn't have a specific way of getting to that place, those other coins are acceptable for Meiser Sheni. So I'm like, how am I askina? No, we're talking about a case. Kishain Malchios Makpidos Zualzu. No, we're talking about a case where the kingdoms don't mind if you take the coin and use it in another place. So even though it's the kingdoms of another coin, they accept it. Like they accept the currency, the other currencies. So Gemara says, well, if that's the case, so the Gemara says, well, if that's the case, when Shmuel said, when he has no path to Meishan, when he's not going to Meishan, he can't pay with this money. And when he has the path to go there, he can pay. Shmuel's talking about when countries don't even allow it. Well, if that's the case, how's he going to take the money from one town to another? The Gemara says, the Memati way but that. No, what happens is he can use them, but it's not so convenient because if they find them on you, they're not going to search you. But if they find them on you, they're going to discipline you. So again, Mara's challenging Rav Nachman, who says that he agrees with Shmuel when you have a way to get there. Tashma, amos shalkan, you can't deconsecrate the Meiser Sheni onto money of Israel if you're in Babylon, or Babylon if you're in Israel. If it's a Babylon, if you're in Babylon and it's Babylonian, you can do it. So even though you're going to end up in Israel to bring the Meiser Sheni money, we still don't allow you to deconsecrate it. So this is against what Rav Nachman said in the name of how Rav Nachman ruled like Shmuel. Says, no, that's the case where the kingdoms don't let you take the money. Well, the Gemara says, well, if that's the case, well, if that's the case, they let you deconsecrate it in Babylon onto Babylonian coins. But what are you going to do with it? You're not going to be able to bring that money to Jerusalem anyway. Gemara says, no, what you could do with it is you could buy an animal with that money and bring the animal to Jerusalem. Mar says, but how could that be? But didn't they say that you had to actually bring the money to Jerusalem and they didn't allow you to take the animal? We learned in the Brisa, the question here is, we learned in the Brisa that all the monies of all the countries used to be brought to Jerusalem. If that's the case, why can't you deconsecrate it onto the money of Babylon? So Amar Bezerah will kash kan bizman sheyad Yisrael tekifa umas olam, kan bizman sheyad umas olam tekifa husband. Well, it depends who's in charge. So if the nations, if the Jewish people are in charge, then there'll be a lot of pilgrims, and then they could take all the money to Jerusalem. But if the nations in the world were in charge, and so therefore they would only go up from the land of Israel, and so therefore they didn't need this takana, they canceled it, and they only accepted the money of Eretz Yisrael, and so therefore you can't deconsecrate the money of Jerusalem on the money of Bavel. That's the way the Ravid explains it. The Rama, Rameir Alevi Abu Afia, he explains it the exact opposite way. Okay. Tana Rabbanan, a very powerful teaching. Ezu Matbeya Shel Yerushalayim. What was the coin of Jerusalem? David Ushlomo Mitzad Echad. So Rashi says that this means that on one side of the coin it was written David and Solomon, and on the other side of the coin it was written Yerushalayim Ira Kodesh. One side it was written David and Solomon, and the other side it was written Jerusalem, the holy city. Ve'ezu matbeya shel Avram Avinu. What's the coin of Abraham? Zaken v'zekena mitzad echad. An older man, older woman on one side, and bachur b'sua mitzad acher. And a younger man and a virgin woman on the other side. Here too, we'd assume that Rashi's explanation is that it was just written, but to me, the whole power of it is if it was the image of an old man on one side with his wife, and on the other side, the young man with his virgin bride. And what's the power of this teaching? Who is this old man and this old woman? The old man and the old woman is Abraham and Sarah. And the young man and the young woman is, Rashi says, it's Isaac and Rebekah. Some say it's Abraham and Sarah in their youth. And so it's a very powerful image of the love of a couple going from the young to the old, that they stay in love together. Two sides of the same coin, the love in springtime and the love in the autumn. So it's very, very beautiful image. Very, very beautiful image of the Gemara in Bava Kamma. Ba'amine Rava mi Rav Chisda. Amalvas chaver al matbeya. So Rava asked the question of Rav Chisda, one who lends the coin, one who lends his friend money on a coin, meaning to say again, pay me back this coin, pay me back a shekel. Mosifu olav. But then they added on to the coin. It says you owe me a shekel, but then they added more metal onto the coin. So now the coin is actually more than it was worth. The coin went up in value. Amrlo no single matpea yotze ba'ose shah. So meaning to say, so what do you do at that moment? So you have, Rav says to Rava, you have to pay that coin still. You can't say, I only owed you a coin that weighed a pound, not an ounce, not one that weighed 2 ounces. You have to give him the coin that weighs 2 ounces now. Even if you added on something the size of a napat, which is a large amount, even if you added on a tartia, even greater, in. Because Xylin Perry. So he says, but now the price of the fruits, you get many more fruits for the size of this coin, because the value of the coin has gone way up. And therefore the problem is, Rashi says that it's interest. You said, can I borrow a coin? And now for that, what you have to pay him back is a coin that's worth twice as much as when you borrowed it. So it says Ravashi Chazinon imachmas tivazil. If the fruits became cheaper because the coin became worth more, minakinle, then he can deduct the addition that he added on. Bimachmas tarazil, but if they went down because there was a lot of rain and there was a lot of fruits, and so therefore is less demand, then wamanakinle. Then you don't have to reduce the coin, because the price, the fact that the fruits can buy more, the fact that the coin can buy more is only because the price of fruits went down, not because the coin went up in value. Gemara says, Vaka shevach l'nyanaska. So Gemara asks the question, but there shouldn't be, Raj says, if you want to cut this coin and make it into smaller coins, we have more than the first one, and it's interest. So Ela ki adar papa Ravuna Breder Rav Yeshua Avdi Ude Bezuzi Da'agar Demes Taya Ayud B'Tamanya. So we say that Rav Papa Ravuna, the son of Rav Yeshua, they did halacha ma'isa that somebody had to pay money to his friend, and he added on to the coin, and he checked out that it was the one zuz the gardemis tayad, and the money of a merchant, an Arab merchant, that he had 2 coins. Ada sarbatamanya. He did 10 old coins that they weighed exactly that, and so therefore he only paid him 8 of those coins. And so therefore, to summarize, if the fruits went down because the value of the coin went up, or if you add on to the coin more than a fifth, then you can't pay with the new coins because it's interest, and so therefore you're supposed to deduct the difference. Okay, we'll stop the recording here. If anybody has any questions,